Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. Now, word to my brethren in the heavyweight division. We're going to talk about the heavyweight division for a second, and we're going to talk about Deontay Wilder. Now, this video is not going to be about the Luis Ortiz steroid case or if the fight's going to happen. If it's not, I'm still waiting for more details on that before I really talk about it. But this video is about Wilder because, the Ortiz fight might not happen because of his whole VADA situation. And that's fine, but what Wilder, he's now using this as a means to say that he's the most feared fighter in boxing, which if he feels that way, that's fine. I could see why he'd feel that way from his perspective. But he's also using this now as a way to kind of just like disrespect heavyweight greats. And, one thing I have a huge issue with is any sport, not just boxing, when athletes speak from a place like they've accomplished something in their sport and they disrespect all-time greats of their sport, that really pisses me off. And if you guys don't know, Wilder recently, he for some reason decided to go, he decided to really go at Mike Tyson and his resume. And I'll read you the quote and I'll give you my opinion on it. He said, I quote, "If you go back, and I want somebody to answer this question for me. How many Hall of Famers did Mike Tyson actually fight? And don't bring up Michael Spinks, that he came from light heavyweight to heavyweight and he was terrified out of his boots. Don't bring up Larry Holmes because we know Larry was way past his prime. So how many of them? You come back with that." End quote. Now, I'm not going to go too hard on Wilder because I actually, in some ways, agree with him. I've actually, myself, kind of said, Mike Tyson was a great talent, probably arguably the greatest talent ever at heavyweight, but he never ultimately beat another great heavyweight. And with that being said, I do think there are some holes in his resume, but does that take away from the fact that he's still an all-time great of the division? Absolutely not. Because some of the things that he did at heavyweight and accomplished at heavyweight still haven't been duplicated. The youngest undisputed champion of all time, youngest heavyweight champion of all time, in his prime, the type of defense he had, his ability to, as a smaller man at heavyweight at 5'11", not 5'11", like 5'9", 5'10", outbox bigger men. I mean, you got to really have high boxing intelligence to do a lot of the things that Mike Tyson did in the ring. So Deontay Wilder, the reason I get pissed off at him is because he's speaking from a place that he's actually accomplished something in the boxing game. Like, bro, you've been caught up by the WBC. You have probably the weakest resume of any champion in boxing. If not the weakest, you're definitely in the top five. He's only really beat on his resume two good fighters when at the time he actually fought them. And I'm talking about Stavern. That was a good win. And Spilka. And you know what? I'll give him Gerald Washington as well because I was actually one of the few people that was clamoring for that fight because it made sense on short notice. But as far as you beating Hall of Fame, you ain't beating Hall of Famers either. I mean, we go through Mike Tyson's resume. I mean, let's look at some of the guys that he actually did wind up beating, or even the guys that he lost. Like, for example, I'll take a guy like Razor Roddick. Razor Roddick, a guy who was 6'3", 82-inch reach. Not as big as Wilder, but had punching power. Wasn't a Hall of Famer. He's right. Mike Tyson didn't beat any Hall of Famers, but guess what? He fought Hall of Famers. And Wilder hasn't fought any Hall of Famers. He hasn't even fought any A-level fighters yet. Mike was in there fighting guys who were A-level fighters. And like Razor Roddick isn't even one of those A-level fighters. But Razor Roddick, if you took Razor Roddick in his prime, if you were somehow able to take Razor Roddick in his prime, the guy that fought Mike Tyson, and put him in the ring with Wilder, he would, for lack of a better word, he would rip Deontay Wilder a new asshole. Excuse my language, but he would rip him a new asshole. All right, honestly, because if you look at a lot of the guys that Wilder's fighting, a lot of them are not devastating punchers. A lot of them are not the most in-shape fighters. I mean, if you just go look at his last 6 fights, we look at Washington, we look at Areola, we look at Spilka, Duapas, Molina, Stavern. Okay, Stavern, Molina, Duapas, and Areola. All those guys are fat guys. They don't have, none of those, not Stavern, well, no, Stavern's chubby, but those guys are really fat guys, and most of those guys that I named aren't necessarily they're not the most well-conditioned heavyweights in the world. And Wilder went the distance with Stavern. A guy, probably the worst version of Stavern we've seen. I know it's not Wilder's fault, but the worst version of Stavern we've ever seen. He went toe to toe with Molina. Molina hurt him in that fight, and Molina is not a big puncher. He took him forever in a day to get Johan Duapas out of there. And at that point in time, we never even heard who Johan Duapas was. And then Spilka was a good fight for him. You got to give him credit for that win because it was a devastating knockout. But Spilka, who's not even known for having tremendous boxing ability, was outboxing Wilder. And then he fought Areola. Areola really is way past it. So, I mean, the guys he's fought, the guys that he thinks he's fought, he hasn't really fought. He hasn't fought those A-level fighters. He hasn't even fought top contenders. The best fighters he fought, if you were to put Spilka and Stavern in the ring with a guy like Razor Roddick, he would rip them a new asshole too, and that's the truth. So you can't sit here and speak from this place of like, I've accomplished something in the boxing game, and I'm gonna sit here and disrespect Mike Tyson because all these guys are all these guys that you're fighting, they're getting popped for PEDs or things that are banned substances but aren't necessarily PEDs, and you're hiding behind the WBC. I mean, come on, man. I mean, if you want to think you're the most feared fighter in boxing, I got no problems with that because I feel like your perspective is just because of what's happening with these guys. But if you seriously think that in your heart of hearts, Mike Tyson wasn't a great fighter, and I know he didn't say that in his quote. He didn't say that Mike Tyson wasn't a great fighter, but he's speaking like Mike Tyson isn't a great fighter. That's what pisses me off because when Mike Tyson won the Undisputed Championship at 19, 20 years old or whatever it was, Deontay Wilder was still getting slapped around in the amateurs. So when you want to disrespect Mike Tyson's resume, you think about that, Deontay. When you were getting slapped up in the amateurs as a clumsy kid, skinny little stick kid from Alabama, Mike Tyson was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. So the guy transcended his sport. That's why he's great. He transcended boxing because of his skill in the ring and the things I mentioned earlier, being a short heavyweight, being able to outbox taller men, being able to knock out inferior opponents in the fashion he did as fast as he did. It really showed how much better he was than his competition. You don't do that, which is why you don't transcend boxing. And also, you're clumsy. You're not gonna fight Joshua. Joshua will beat the crap out of you. And yeah, man. I mean, Mike, you'll never be happy. You will never in your life. I don't care how hard you try. You will never in your life be half the fighter Mike Tyson is. Not even half. Not even 30% of the fighter Mike Tyson is. So don't disrespect Mike Tyson like that because you're clumsy. You haven't fought anybody. And, I mean, he did things that nobody in the division has done. And we can't say the same for you. So, like I said, when you were in the amateurs getting slapped up as a skinny kid from Alabama, Mike Tyson was the undisputed champion of the world. And that's what it is. Just want to give my opinion on that. It's just a food for thought. You guys take it how it is. And as I always say, you can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just a kid from Daniel. So until next time, take care, guys.